Hello and welcome to the inaugural, that's right, the first ever, the one, the only thing that I plan to keep on up on because for once in my life I feel like I care about something enough and this doesn't take up a whole lot of time, maybe a couple hours a week, which is a lot better than the billion hours a week I was spending on LCS and its various power rankings. Today we are covering, wait for it, that's right, patch 9.15 of Teamfight Tactics. I am here to give you the patch rundown. And if you want to see me play some TFT live at that platinum, baby, you can check me out on www.twitch.tv/trombone no vowels. That's right, it's just like the channel name, except with the Twitch in front, and there's no space. Also, those times on 5 p.m. Monday and noon on Wednesday are going to be in Central Time. So if you live in Texas, Illinois, other states, perhaps some parts of Oklahoma, that's right, that's that time. You can catch me there and we will be live. But this is a ginormous patch, and instead of self-promoting all the damn time, how about I just get into it, shall we? I love it. But before we do that, I do want to get into a precursor. I think a lot of this patch is, at first I thought, and a lot of people think with the player damage reduction and the win-loss streak breakpoints, you think that the meta is going to shape and evolve a lot differently. And while this patch is massive and it's definitely going to be meta-altering all on its own, I think a lot of these changes up here are going to not have a lot to do with that. You see a lot of the hyper roll strats, the gunslinger especially, that has the curse blade, the level 3 Tristana, etc., etc. You see it around, you see Skara playing it and freaking popping off. It's a good comp. It's not a good way to play, but it's a way to play that works. I don't think this really gets rid of that, like maybe some people were hoping. What it does do, though, is allows econ builds to scale alongside it. Now, the Gunslinger comp, while being super strong, is going to continue to be super strong, and I don't think there's really much we can do about that. Two tier 1 gunslingers with a tier 2 gunslinger and then a tier 3, it just scales really well into the game. It's just something that's going to be good. It's something that needs to be addressed at some point, and this patch, unfortunately, just isn't it. However, what it does do is I feel like it allows some of the smart plays and the econ players to play alongside it and not get rolled by it every time without any kind of gain from it. But you see these win-loss streak breakpoints. It counts for them, too. They're going to get the early leads. They're going to snowball, and they're going to continue to be able to snowball. And when they lose that streak, they get it back a round earlier. It is what it is. I'd like to see something like that, maybe a 9.15B, as it's pretty new. I've heard about it in the last couple days, not a whole lot before that. You hear whispers, but nothing crazy. But that's not the point. Point is, prologue. This patch is going to be meta altering, but it's not going to get rid of aggressive play. It's just going to make some of that slower econ play a little bit more favorable at some times. It doesn't put anyone at advantage, disadvantage. It doesn't really change how you can play the game much, except allows you to not have to cave into those aggro kind of styles. But let's get right into it. Speaking of those win-loss streaks, you're going to get them a little bit earlier at 4 and 7. With the 2 at the front. Instead of 2, 5, and 8, just 1 earlier helps you build them a little faster. If you end up losing them, you go on a nice mega loss streak or a nice mega win streak. Let's be positive, shall we? Get a nice mega win streak, you lose 1, you can build it up 1 round quicker. Feels a little bit better. It's not so feels bad, man. It helps you get a little bit of that econ a little bit faster, make up for some poor rolls, or just get you to the 50 a little bit faster. Moving on to class breakpoints. This one's kind of a weird one to cover because it doesn't do anything. There's 5 gunslingers. They upgraded it to 6. You can't make a gunslinger. Brawler, same. Shapeshifter, I think, is less than 5, but you still can't make a shapeshifter, so it doesn't matter. Blade Master at 9. You can make 9 Blade Masters. You need 3 spatulas, 3 recurve bows. The possibility of getting that is crazy. I mean, I don't know what this kind of power spike looks like with 4 extra attacks, but I highly doubt it's worth the pain and anguish it would take you to get 3 spatulas and 3 recurve bows in addition to your 6 other sorcerers. It's gonna, or blade masters. It's gonna be a giant pain, probably not worth it. I mean, if you want to be memey and you think you can pull it off, by all means go for it, but I would not recommend it. Moving on then, since this is pretty meh, we're moving on to player damage. The big things to note here, obviously, so basically tier 4 and 5 champions are going to be the biggest hit. You see at 4 and 5, damage reduced at pretty much every star. I don't know why they did it like this. It seems a little silly. I like how they didn't do a tier 3 for 5 star, or a 3 star for 5, because you never see it. But the big ones that you do want to watch out for is damage from spiderlings and elementalist golems is now down to 1 from 2, which is going to mean those nasty Elise players that somehow managed to pull out wins in the beginning won't hit you for quite as much. Nasty Elise player. Anyway, they won't hit you for quite as much. It's going to do a little bit less for you. And another one to look out for is this tier 3 at 2 stars. You see that a lot with the Volies, the Ashes, Evelyns, Morganas. There's a lot of 2-star tier 3 units rolling around. So this is probably the most impactful one, the one you're going to see in the most of your games, besides perhaps the Elise Spiderlings doing less damage. This is definitely going to be the one that's going to affect you the most. You're going to take 1 less damage from each of those, so that's a big plus. I would say Kennen, but we'll talk about Kennen. Carousel stage. This one is kind of my like dark horse. Like you scroll down to the bottom. They're like, oh look, it'll rank you it'll put you into the same queue that you just played in, which, while awesome, is not the dark horse that the carousel stage has brought us, because I don't have a drum roll, but the available units is now down to 9. The reason that this is such a big change to me, and one that I think is going to go overlooked a lot, is it really allows players to utilize their health as a resource so much more often and more effectively. I should just say more effectively. I don't think it'll allow you to do it more often. But now you can position yourself for a carousel to get more item breakpoints that you're looking for. Items are incredibly important, and most comps can function off of about 2 items. Which is 4 carousel rounds. If you can position yourself well in the first 3 following the initial, you're going to be in a really good spot. And if you can manage your health around that to get the pick that's better for you, because instead of 2 extra units, you got to remember, in addition to these 2 extra units, there's also going to be 2 extra items we're floating around. So now you have 1 extra unit, 1 extra item floating around. That means everybody's going to want, there are going to be more people wanting what you want. So positioning yourself on the ladder, enable yourself to get those item breakpoints is so much more important, and is going to be really interesting to see how people adapt to that, and see how important items really are to them. You go on Twitter and you see everyone bitching about item RNG forcing, like, no. Just play your carousels better. They can play their carousels better now, and maybe they'll stop bitching on Twitter. We'll see. But like I said, it's a massive patch, and we can't spend forever talking about systems, so let's move on into those synergy changes. First of all, we're going to be talking about assassins. That's right, assassins, baby. They jump earlier, and their jumps are quicker. Non-assassin champion movement is slowed for the start of combat, and assassins can be targeted sooner. This is huge, and it's huge not for the reason you think, oh man, assassins are gone, it's going to be amazing. No. This is amazing because you can start corner stacking again. There's been a lot of really interesting ways to see how people have adapted their positioning because of the assassin meta. In lower elos, it kind of disappears for the slingers and the demons in higher, but it is what it is. And Blade Master. Oh my god. Anyway, but seeing how everyone's kind of changed to adapt to the assassin meta, and now making assassins less effective at jumping, essentially because non-assassin champions are going to be slower. They're earlier and quicker, which means your units are going to have less time to move, which means corner stacking is pretty viable. Assassins can now be targeted sooner, so now you can set up your front line. Maybe you have some sort of CC on the outside. I don't think there's anything with instant CC. Either way, your tanks are going to be able to tank it up, start doing damage on the outside. Maybe you got some Blade Master set up there. I don't know. Either way, corner stacking much more effective, but still beware of those Blitzcranks and those Anivias. They are going to wreck your day if you corner stack exclusively, and then you want to use what you've learned in the assassin meta to counter that. Eve attack damage up 10 and her ability damage up 50 at ranks, star 2 and 3. We'll just call it rank 2 and 3 because I like that a lot better, which is irrelevant. What this does, though, is it makes Eve much more competitive at that tier 3 spot. You see, like, Kennen dropping out, Morgana becoming less effective, Aatrox being gutted. There's a lot of champions that are a lot less effective at that tier 3 range. Obviously, Voli's still going to be there, Ashe is still going to be there. There's a lot of strong units still. But with the absence of some of the other big players right now, and the fact that Eve was kind of on the cusp of being a pretty decent tier 3 unit to begin with, I would probably see her priority going up a little bit. She's pretty strong. She's not overly strong, but now she's stronger. I am repeating myself. Redundancy of department redundant. I fucked that up. It's okay. We're moving on because Katarina got a buff. Her ability now targets 4, 6, and 8 players at rank 1, 2, and 3. That's right. It's almost a non-change. I think a lot of Katarina's downfall, drawbacks, should we say, comes to poor positioning. If you couldn't position her well before, positioning her now with one extra ability target isn't going to do a whole lot for you. However, if you could get that off, or you have a rank 2, I said rank 2, a little extra HP, a little extra mana, so much more effective. Again, it's not a huge buff, but it's one of those that if you have already been doing the right things, favors you more moving forward. Moving on to the big boy himself, the king of the jungle, Rengo. His attack damage is up 5, attack speed up 0.05, and the ability attack speed up 0.1, 0.2, and 0.3. And when we're talking attack speed, those 0.1s add up. That is massive. At rank 3, Rengo is going to be a monster. Getting a rank 3 Rengo, is it worth the time? Probably not. He got a nice couple quality of life buffs. He's not such a feels bad man now when you run into him. If you're like really struggling to find that Gnar or don't quite have the 4 wild set up, Rengo is pretty decent now. He's not, like I said, he's less of a feels bad. He's not like a must-have tier 3 though. He's just kind of where he's been, just a little bit better now. Again, if you need something with Wild, if you need something with Assassin, he's just a little bit less of a feels bad man. That's all these really are, unless you can get that tier 3, that rank 3. You get that rank 3. Plus, he's better. He's better. I think there's a lot of things, a lot of champions that do what he does better, though. Like Eve and Katarina, I'm just saying. Maybe a Kha'Zix even at some time. Like, I'm just saying. Like, especially since Kha'Zix got some buffs, guys. Anyway, that's Rengo. Again, better at rank 3. Better overall. Not so much of a feels bad man. But there is a lot of patch to cover, and we must go, go, go. We move on to demons. That mana burn chance is down, 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 baby. It's going to be... I mean, you can see it, right? It's 5%, 15%, and 25%. That's right. If I'm opening another tab, I'm going to read these for you, just in case you don't want to read. Which makes demons splashing and 4 demons is pretty much not super worth. If you can get the right 4 demons, like Mort got a slight nerf. I don't think she's gutted by any means, but Aatrox is much weaker. Eve is a little bit stronger, but Brand. Okay, let's think about this for a bit. You got Brand, Eve, Morg. What else would you really slot in there? Elise, I guess if you have a carryover and then just really wait for like a Swain, could be pretty good. So anyway, regardless, at a splash of 2, demons are actually pretty good. Their mana burn is now about unit pace, or item pace. So it's like Hush, Shrink Ray, whatever the heck you want to call it, Curse Blade. It's about like that now, which I think is an over adjustment, but overall, it's going to be a nice quality of life change, especially after seeing so many demons, mana burn you to death, and never, ever, ever be able to cast an ability ever. So it's super nice, albeit probably a little bit too strong. 2 is worth, 4 is worth-ish, and 6 is almost feels bad, man. Varus, in addition, demons have also gotten some nerfs. Varus's ability damage is down 150, and is in the same at rank 3. Not a huge hit to Varus. I think he's less of a slot in anywhere kind of champ at this point. If you got a good front line, kind of struggling to find a back line, slot in a Varus, and he'll do massive damage when he ults. The fact that it takes so long already, and he attacks pretty slow, I feel like he has pretty slow DPS if not for his ult, and the fact that it does less damage now means you're probably going to want to star him up to rank 2. Otherwise, he's more of a trade-off at this point. Like, right, do you want to put in the Varus or the Lucian? It's more of a debate now, and it's not so comp dependent, so in the early game you can make those decisions as you will. In addition, speaking of big boys with big buffs, Aatrox. Ability damage down 150, 150, and an health nerf by 50 as well. Tier 1 Aatrox is real feels bad now. Like, you can't just be struggling in the early game, find an Aatrox, slot him in, and hope for the redemption from this guy. The true redemption from this guy, by the way, because let's admit it, sometimes redemption is underwhelming. Sometimes it's freaking pog, but most times it's like, eh. So the true redemption from this guy, Aatrox's ult at rank 1 is no longer as good. Still pretty worth at rank 2, but again, he's not really something that you can save your comp put in. Like, if you're struggling, unless you have Blade Master, maybe. That health nerf is huge. Like, we got to remember, Graves was a semi-viable champion before they nerfed his health by 50, because a lot of people were playing him up in the front line. I think Aatrox is in a very similar position where he plays relatively front line, so he's going to be taking a lot more damage to begin with, and nerfing his health by 50 is actually going to be pretty huge. So unless you have a tier 2 Aatrox, I don't even think it's worth to put him in at this point, because, again, big boy, big nerfs. Moving on to Morgana's ability damage. Speaking of big boys with big nerfs, is a girl, and she got some little nerfs. She got a 100 down at rank 1, 50 at rank 2, and unchanged at rank 3. Kind of the same situation as Varus here, albeit a little bit better, because she does more AoE. I feel like Morgana's AoE is just better than Varus in most places. Don't get me, like, Morgana was a must pick. Varus was like a sometimes pick. So maybe with more econ strats, more Ranger Knights, we'll see some good stuff. But like as it stands right now, Morgana not that much of a nerf if the meta stayed just the way it is right now. Not a huge nerf, still pretty good. They also increased her cast time to 0.5 seconds from 0.35 seconds. Not a huge change, but maybe noticeable, like if she's on the cusp of death and gets off those. Because that deals like a quarter of a health bar. Now it's going to do a little less than a quarter of a health bar and might not go off. But it is what it is, and we have to move on to dragons. Dragons no longer have 100% magic immunity. They got that 83% magic immunity. That's right. Less clutch. But got some compensation buffs. Shyvana got 10 more armor, Aesol got 50 more HP, and 50 more damage on his rank 2. If you're going for a rank 3 Aesol, you're nutty. And not in the good way. Like, you insane. Get checked out up there. I mean, unless you, like, high roll like a motherfucker and, like, get a tier 3 Aesol, but, like, I'm sorry, rank 3. Don't. It's not worth. So, basically what we're looking at is a 50 damage buff and a 50 health buff. While significant, I don't think it's like gonna bring Aesol back to Shojin. That nerf. And Shyvana might be a little bit more viable at rank 1. You might not have to wait for that rank 2 Shyvana to pop off. Obviously, there's some certain positionings, and everything in TFT is situational. So But I do think overall Shyvana at rank 1 is just a little bit better than she was before. Maybe a bit more viable. Again, contesting for the power struggle that has been left by Kennen and, to an extent, Morgana. Moving on then, speaking of the big boy himself, he's not even in here because they don't care about him. This is about Elementalist buffs. Nothing changed to the Golem. The Golem still summons. It's all the same. But we talking about Lissandra and Brand. That's right, baby. Lissandra. She's got no change at rank 1. A 75 buff at rank 2 and a whopping 150 damage rank 3. With the Kennen nerfs, so recently you've seen a lot of Elementalist comps and splashes of Elementalist crop up. You see the top player 23/59 right now playing a lot of Elementalists. I was watching his stream earlier today, and someone in his chat said he plays whatever comes to him, but there was always 3 Elementalists in every comp. You see it cropping up more and more. I think with the Kennen nerfs, it'll reduce that a little bit. I think the reason Elementalist was really good is because Kennen was almost a must pick in every single strat that you ever had. If you found a Kennen, you picked it up. Now that's not so much the case. Lissandra will still probably have the same, if not a little bit more priority than she had previously. And with the damage buff, if you can get a tier 3, go for, or I'm sorry, a rank 3, go for a rank 3. If you can't, I don't know. It's a little bit better. If you can't, it's a little bit better, and she's maybe a better element, or a better glacial now. Who knows? A little bit more damage, never hurt nobody. Moving on to Brand. Speaking of little buffs, we got 25, 50, 75. If you get a tier 3 Brand, same as Asol, you gotta get yourself checked, but it's okay. We'll bear with you. So basically, we're looking at a 25 and a 50 damage buff. Among the bounces, it's pretty significant, but it's not overly significant. Brand's just about in the same spot where he was. He's probably just kind of quality of life buffed at this point to keep up with some of the other tier 4s. Leona comes to mind. I would put Leona Brand at tier 4, probably top of that tier. Moving on then, speaking of Leona, the protectee girl, we're talking about Guardians, baby. Instead of 40 armor per stack, we got 50 armor per stack. That's right, a whopping 50. That's 10 more for every stack. But Guardians don't buff themselves. As a compensation for this, though, oh my god. Braum got a 50 armor buff, and Leona got a 45. So, Braum is now insane. Like, honestly freaking insane. He already had the health pool. Now he's got armor to back it up. The boy is huge. With knights, which we're going to talk about shortly, rising in priority, I don't think it's going to be as big as I'm making it out to be, but like Braum was already a really strong unit, and giving him a little bit more armor, a little bit more sustain on top of that, especially if you get like a rank 2 Braum, is going to be just nutty. If you can get the Guardian buff, it's nice. And Braum really, when I'm talking about Braum being nutty, it's really only in a frontline situation. If you have knights that buff the whole team, obviously go for the knights. But if you're kind of lacking a piece to your frontline, Braum is going to slot in really nice. He's, again, 50 armor is no joke. That is so much freaking armor. He already has a health pool that's insane. He has damage reduction on his shield. Dude's gonna pop the fuck off this patch. Sorry for swearing. I think I avoided it all the way up to the... No, I didn't. That's alright. He's gonna pop the fuck off this patch. It's gonna be insane. Moving on then, speaking of the people in shining armor themselves, the knights. Here they are. That's right. Instead of blocking basic attacks and only on the knights, your team now ignores 15, 30, and 55 damage from all sources. Sweet. Which is awesome, because 15 damage reduction on 2 knights, 30 on 4 knights. Now, let's think of like Ionic Spark. Ionic Spark just got nerfed. It's 150 instead of 200 damage now. You block 30 of that every time, like maybe a Lucian or... who else ults a lot? Fiora, maybe? Darius, situationally. I guess Darius would have got it anyway. Well, no, because it's auto attacks. This is all sources. So a nice little Ionic Spark tech, I think, would be really nice. It's kind of what the game needed in addition to an Ionic Spark nerf. We saw a little bit of that. Do I think it's still going to do just fine in brawlers with like an insane amount of sustain? Yeah, it'll be just fine. But Knights are going to be a nice little tech against Ionic Spark comps, and we should probably see them drop in priority at least a little bit, as you don't really see significant damage reduction until 6 Knights anyway. So, in addition to that, look at that. 5 armor. Oh my god, that's 15 armor. It's insane. Darius got 15 armor. Garen got 5. Mordekaiser got 5. Sedge got 5. Kayle got 5. Lost 50 HP. Not quite a grave situation because Kayle was used much differently. She was more of a sustain your backline instead of a frontline champ. Anyway, again, that's really, really hit. It hits people like Aatrox because they're in the front line. Kayle was kind of a mid to back line anyway, so it's not as big of a hit. And the stun duration on Sejuani is up 0.5 seconds at rank 2 and 1 full second at rank 3. Again, wouldn't suggest going for a rank 3 of 4 cost units. It's insane, and you're going to waste a lot of gold. I mean, again, if you high roll, okay, I'm going to keep tossing this out. If you high roll, go for it. But if you're not high rolling, cut it. Cut your losses. Darius armor by 15. That's going to make him such a stronger knight, especially with some Garen nerfs, which we will cover later in the nobles right after the ninjas. But I do want to talk about ninjas, not only because they're next, but because Kennen's here, and Zed's here, and this is weird. So ninjas, instead of getting 40% AD and 80% AD, now get 40 AD and AP and 60 AD and AP at 4, where the 40 would be at 1. Shen's attack speed is up 0.1, which again is huge, but it's Shen. Again, in early like Blade Master, he could be pretty good in just to kind of round out what you've already got going on. Standalone is Shen. He does Shen things. He puts down his circle and everybody's safe now. It's Shen. So I don't think this really compensates for it a whole lot, and the AP does next to nothing for him. I don't think it increases duration of the circle, as far as I'm aware, but I would have to double check that at some point. And if you guys know, feel free to drop it in the comments, because I don't know. In addition, we're looking at some Zed attack speed buffs by 0.05 and damage buffs by 5. Overall, a pretty big nerf to Zed. However, minus 40% AD and just grabbing 40 AD instead is really, really rough. Like, his Shuriken was already pretty weak to begin with, so giving him 40 AP doesn't feel that great. Same with giving him 60. The percent AD on Zed was what made him so good, especially with the assassin nerfs that we've seen. Seeing how much, you know, the multiplicative crit chance going down and becoming additive instead. And now you're basically just seeing like a straight up AD nerf to him. I don't think Zed's in a very good spot right now. I don't think he's in a terrible spot, but definitely less so than before by quite a bit. Kennen is in the same boat pretty much, mostly because he did rely on his ability damage, and the buff to the AP. So you like, okay, let's look at this for a second. He loses 175 damage on his ability, rank 1, but gains 40 AP. So that's a net loss of 135 damage. That's still a crap ton of damage. Not to mention he loses 200 at rank 2 and 275 or 225 at rank 3. Kennen, like, there's no 40 or 60 AP that's going to make up for this damage. Kennen is so much weaker than he was before. Ninja doesn't do much for him. You look at Shen. Shen does Shen things. Zed is weaker from it. Kennen's weaker from it. The only one that really came out even, I wouldn't even call it a head, because I think Akali got a slight nerf on this as well. If you count it with, like, just even a ninja splash bonus with the 40 AP, she comes out fine. So she loses 50 damage rank 1. She loses 100 damage rank 2. But she gains 40 of that back. Let's assume that the AP is equal to 1 damage, maybe. Let's hope that that's how that works. Like, she comes out pretty okay. She needed a slight nerf anyway. She got a slight nerf. She only ends up losing like 10 damage here, ends up losing 60 damage here. Not huge nerfs. So Akali ends up coming out probably the best out of all the assassins besides Shen, who I would consider relatively untouched. Obviously, he comes out of it a little bit better, but not a whole lot. Shen and Akali are going to be the ninjas you're going to want to look for. Zed, not so much, and Kennen, almost not at all, unless you're going to run some elementalists. Then maybe you see, and I would recommend item stacking him like crazy. Morello Ludens. Maybe just a Morello death cap at this point. Who knows? Moving on then to the nobles. We got 60 armor and MR instead of 100 armor, and 35 light if on hit, but that is unchanged. This is kind of an interesting one, because one of my biggest, I guess, griefs with nobles, and it wasn't huge, but it was big enough, is that it seemed really strong early. And I think getting rid of 40 armor when a lot of early game comps rely on auto attacks, at least that's what I do anyway, because Aries are almost impossible to come by early game these days. It feels really good to have that reduced by 40. On the other hand, if you do find an Ahri, that's going to be Feels Bad Man, but she puts out a loaded damage anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. But it still scales well into the later stages of the game, where they just reduce damage overall, instead of just those auto attacks. When you start to see more Sorcerer comps, when you start to see that in addition to Rangers, in addition to Glacials, stuff like that, it really starts to matter there. So it got rid of some of that early power, gave it some mid-game adjustments, and I think it's still pretty okay. It comes out ahead. I like the rework overall. I don't think it's going to be a very powerful buff. It's going to be a powerful buff, but very powerful, I feels like an overstatement. There's not a lot of MR items other than Dragon's Claw that you really feel like going for, so we'll really have to see how this goes. Vayne attack damage is down 5, but her attack speed goes up a full 0.1, which is pretty insane, because she gets to apply them silver bolts, and when you're applying silver bolts, your attack damage doesn't matter all that much. Obviously, it'd be nice to put like a BF sword on her if you can. Maybe find some other items like a Ginsu's and make that go a little bit faster. Get those silver bolts quicker. Who knows? To each their own. Vayne comes out of this a little bit stronger, I think, because of her silver bolts. The fact that she doesn't use mana, but demons are kind of trash anyway, so that's not worth covering anymore. Garen attack damage is reduced by 5, but he gets a 0.05 attack speed buff. However, he gets 90 damage reduced at rank 1, nothing reduced at rank 2, and 90 damage added at rank 3 on his ability. And if it's been annoying you that he stands still after there's nobody in range and he's killed everybody, he will now move and do more damage. DPS Garen's back, baby. I don't know about Morello Garen. I think they got that a little bit in the early game, but mid-game maybe. Garen is still a force. Definitely a weaker unit, especially, again, with Darius gaining 15 armor. Like, that might make up for the damage loss that Garen got here. Again, mostly in his ability, but that's kind of what you put Garen in for anyway. Moving on, because, again, there's a lot to cover, and we're only halfway there. We got Pirates. Pirates got buffed, because they're always getting buffed and nerfed. They had, I think it was 2.0, and now it's reduced to 1.6, and now it's back up to 1.75. Hoo. Ideally, you're going to get 1.75 gold on average per chest, which is farther away from 0 than 1.6. You see where I'm getting here? Wonderful. And also there's some individual pirates that got some buffs. We were talking about Graves a lot today. Graves' attack speed is up 0.05. Do I think it's going to be game altering? No. Is it going to make Graves a little bit better quality of life wise? Hell yeah. And Twisted Fate has improved cast speed, which is nice. And his ability damage is up by 50, 100, and 150, making him maybe viable, especially in a sort comp. I think with a little bit of a damage amp, he doesn't really have an HP amp, but I don't think he needs it. If he can do a little bit more damage, do a little bit more DPS, cast a little bit faster, he might be viable. Am I saying he's like top tier? No, but he's definitely viable. And for a tier 2 unit, like, these seem like very decent numbers to me. But that's Pirates. Hopefully you get more gold and less boots. Only time will tell. It's still going to feel bad when you get that boot, though. Just letting you know. Moving on to Void. Instead of all your units ignoring 50 armor, Void units are now going to deal true damage. And what I like about this is Void units now deal true damage. It doesn't say attack for true damage. It says deal true damage. That's sexy. That's a sexy looking thing right there. However, it doesn't give it to all your units, which is kind of unfortunate. But now Void units should be a little bit stronger and a little bit easier to splash. Especially since Assassins and Ninjas have decreased, I'm guessing, in this patch. Ooh, excuse me. In this patch for priority. There's not really much of a point to going old Voids anyway. So new Voids as a splash might be a nice little damage amp that you can use. Get a Cho'Gath and a Rek'Sai and a Kassadin, or spice it up, throw a Kha'Zix in there at some point. Who knows? Let's talk about it. We got Kassadin has a 10 attack damage buff with an attack speed nerf of 0.05. I think Kassadin comes out pretty nice looking here. What I would like to see again, because he has more damage and deals true damage, would be like an item stack Kassadin. I miss item stack Kassadin so much, like with Double Rage Blade and RFC. Ooh, it would be sexy. Plus he's doing true damage the whole time. Ooh. Shield, baby, shield. Anyway, that's Kassadin. Comes out overall, I think, a little bit ahead on this one. Kha'Zix's ability damage, non-isolated, is now up at rank 2 by 50 and up at rank 3 by 100. His attack damage is up by 5. Kha'Zix buff all around. He's more of that stat check champion again. Pretty nice for early game, especially if you can get a nice early tier 2 or a tier 3 by happenstance. However, with Voids getting changes, I think they're going to be grabbed pretty quickly here. Rek'Sai may finally be relevant, for she has a 10 attack damage buff and 50, 100, and 150 ability damage buff. That's right. Them's are some buffs. Rek'Sai, your girl. The Burrow girl herself. Rek'Sai. That's good stuff. And her ability heal, however, does 150, 100, and 50 less. So I'm not sure I love what they did with Rek'Sai here, because I guess they avoided Ionix perk on Rek'Sai pretty much. Because, yeah, with Brawlers, she'll still be pretty tanky, still have a decent amount of sustain. The ability heal isn't dead, it's just a lot weaker. So, but they traded that for damage. So, it doesn't really I said so twice. Ionic Spark on Rek'Sai, a little bit worse, but should have a little bit more damage to back it up. Get rid of units in front of you a little bit faster, which would be nice if you're rolling Brawlers anyway. It's good stuff happening here. Good stuff happening. Not to mention, our boy Cho'Gath got a 0.05 attack speed buff, which is pretty insignificant. However, he got a 50 damage buff and a 100 damage buff. We can mention the 150, but like who? Again, guys, rank 4 tier 3s, gotta cut them. Gotta cut them. Unless you get them like magic. If you get them like magic, go for it. But some damage buff, and now assume that's true damage. Now we doing 500 true damage. Add, I don't know, a Rabadon's, and you got a lot of damage. Cho'Gath with some items is back, baby. However, the knockup is going to get hit a little bit for that by 0.25 and 0.5 seconds at rank 2 and 3, so really all you're going to look at is the 0.25 seconds. In the grand scheme of things, Cho'Gath ends up a little bit stronger. Not like super, super strong. Item stack Cho'Gath with Void. Ooh, I'm so excited to see those comps. It's going to be so much fun. Moving on then to Yordles. We are closing in on the end of this damn patch. They got a buff at 3 Yordles and a nerf at 6, but 5% each, so it kind of evens itself out. But the big, huge, ginormous, awesome, great change, we'll call it a buff because it's a freaking buff, also has the chance. I don't know if it also dodges all. Since it doesn't say all, I'm guessing it also has the chance to dodge on-hit effects, which is huge. We were talking about the hyper roll no-brain strat earlier with the Curse Blade. If you can build Yordles in response to that, have like a Tristana, Poppy, and Cannon's kind of trash. Maybe like a Gnar, or even a Vigar at that point to avoid it. And you stack those up, stack up 3 Yordles, have the rest of a team. But if you can have a core that's immune to on-hit effects, it's going to be so good. The downside is if anyone else is hyper-rolling in your game, they could tech Yordles to screw you over. Likelihood of that happening is very low, though. It's a super specific comp. Anyway, big thing here, again, on-hit effects are dodged, which is amazing. Red buff can be dodged. Curse Blade can be dodged. Swordbreaker can be dodged. Hush can be dodged. It's ginormous. And since those already have like a 20% chance to attack or to hit you anyways, besides red buff, oof, it's going to be sexy. It's going to be sexy. You're going to have a core of Yordles just fucking shit up. Lulu, however, has 5 less armor. Sad face. She was in a pretty good spot, and I think she was mostly used for her ult anyway. She has a pretty decent health pool. I don't think Lulu is going to go down all that much. Maybe just a little bit easier to kill, which is fine because she was a sorcerer. Vigar got a 500. Got a 500 HP nerf, or buff. Got a 50 HP buff. It's pretty good. Vigar seemed a little bit squishy. I think up to 500 HP makes him pretty decent. I mean, I don't think Vigar's really worth it below tier 2 anyway. Or I'm sorry, rank 2 anyway, as a tier 3 unit. But maybe with the buff, it's worth checking out. A little less squishy, have to care a little bit less about where you position him. Because you almost had to protect the Vigar, and when you had things like Kennen, when you had things like Morgana, he wasn't really high on the priority list. It's like, oh, this is my 3rd sorcerer. So this will be really nice quality of life, especially if you're going to run sorcerers. Gnar got a 5 AD buff. I don't think that's going to do a whole lot. All that really does is prevents you from like crying your eyeballs out when he doesn't ult, because he did a little bit more DPS that round. That's all I really got for it. Other champions, Blitzcrank mana. I think that's going to go relatively unchanged. Maybe he ults one more time, but it's Blitzcrank. He's mainly used just as a disposition tool, and he does a wonderful job at it. I don't think he needs extreme buffs to make up for what he does, because what he does extremely well. He forces other players to position differently, and that is actually huge in this game. Ashe AD's got a buff by 5, since you're item stacking her anyway, especially in regards to attack speed, maybe a Sojin or 2. Ugh, it's going to be a little bit gross. I don't know where this came from. Ashe was already in a pretty good place. I think she had, what was it, the highest or the second highest attack damage in the game already. Kindred's, or maybe it was just for Rangers. Might have just been for Rangers. Kindred AD is up 5 as well. Would have liked to see maybe more of an attack speed here. She's really used for her ult, and you don't hyper stack attack speed items on Kindred. I would be fine keeping the 55 if I got a little bit more attack speed on Kindred. That's just kind of a bitch. That's not really much of anything, so Kindred I think is not going to see a whole lot of a change here. Ability cast time is the same. We kind of already talked about that. Yasuo got a 10 AD buff, but Yasuo, again, he's used for his shield. He attacks stupid quick, so 10 AD is actually going to be huge. I think Yasuo is going to be brought into line, especially since you see the Karthus buff. Like, Kaele's already really strong for her ultimate. Yasuo is really strong for his ultimate, and because he attacks super fast, add a little bit of AD on that, Yasuo priority is going to go up a little bit. But so is Karthus, because he got some buffs. He got 50 at rank 1, 100 at rank 2. If you can somehow pull a rank 3 Karthus out your butt, like, that's 1,000 damage right there. Go for it. Like, it's 150 buff, but it's 1,000 damage to 13 people. That's insane. That's more people than people have on the board. And he also got ability targets at 5, 9, and 13. Karthus, decently stronger. I think the biggest thing you see here is tier 2 Karthus can now hit a full board at 9. Granted, there's some force of nature things that would limit that, but he's going to be able to hit a full board with 700 damage, which is actually huge. All you got to do is position him right, and he won't let you down anymore. Anyway, that is all the champion changes, synergy changes, etc., etc. Time to move into the back half where we talk about items. Locket now gives a 250 HP shield. You're like, oh, looks a Locket buff, but lasts for 4 seconds. It's a Locket nerf. Oh my god. I can't tell you guys how happy that makes me. Locket stacking people have been the bane of my existence. Now all I have to deal with is Zeeks? Bring on the Zeeks. Get rid of that stupid 600 shield. Oh, on your whole back line because you're just stacking the back row with Locket. Invincible Locket monsters. It was insane. 4 seconds. Huge nerf to Locket. I like it, and I think it requires you to use Locket a lot differently than people have been. It's going to be really fun to see what kind of things people can do with Locket, especially considering it only lasts for 4 seconds. I think it'd be super fun to put on a frontline now. Ionic Spark, like we talked about earlier, got nerfed by 50 damage. It's now going to do 150 every time someone casts an ability on the enemy team. Hush Silence duration is down 2 seconds. Do I think it hurts over much? No. I think Hush is still a pretty strong item situationally in the situations that it's strong in. 2 seconds isn't really going to take that away from it. Just made it a little bit worse. Still viable. Static Shiv damage is down 10 to 90, which is actually pretty big, considering Shiv stacking was another big, I don't want to call it another big thing that was happening. So seeing it limited a little bit is kind of nice, especially with the night changes. If you get 6 nights, you got 55 damage. You're taking, what, 35? Instead of 45, that's huge. That's huge, and it's gonna be super awesome. So, some of these, I thought I saw one that actually might make a difference. Gangplank, here it is. Improved barrel placement logic, and they persist if GP dies while the fuse is lit. This is gonna be one of those things that just quality of life change for Gangplank. It's gonna feel a lot better to play him. Maybe that's why he didn't get any buffs or nerfs or anything, is because they just wanted to see how this does. I also do. And Rek'Sai will now heal with Redemption if she's burrowed. So, that wraps it up. Thank you guys for watching so much. If you liked it, please leave a like. If you didn't, let me know why. If you want to have a conversation about TFT, the things that I said, you thought I'm stupid, you want to talk about where you think the meta is going to go, where do you think the meta is going to be in 4 days? And then it'll change. Where do you think the meta is going to be in 2 days? What do you think the meta is like right now? Don't tell me it's RNG dependent, because you're wrong. You're wrong. And you're bad. So thank you guys. I appreciate it, even if you are bad. And I love you. Not actually, but in like the most, I don't know if it's platonic or non-platonic. The one where I don't want to mate with you. That way. I appreciate you very much. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And again, if you want to check out my stream, you can at www.twitch.tv/trombone-no-vowels, or you can check me out on Twitter at TRMBN-no-vowels, because I'm cheeky like that. That's right, I used it again. Bye, everybody, and thank you so much. Until my next video, have a good one.